A very, very good evening and warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick and Pay. And welcome to an evening of just seriously cool wine and seriously cool winemakers. As we've got royalty on the show tonight. We've got the brand new Diners Club South African Winemaker of the Year. Now, this is important if you're watching the show. When he comes on screen, you're not allowed to look him directly in the eye. You have to dip your head slightly. You can't call him Conrad. You have to call him Mr. Vlok. He's very important now. He's the winemaker of the year. And he's someone who's been on Dan Really Likes Wine before. We had a long conversation about spearfishing rather than wine. I'm very excited to have him as part of our lineup. We also have a winemaker who has a brand new label with some seriously cool names. The man behind the wines of Idiom and Whalehaven. Reino's got a brand new range at Thiart wines, so we will find out about those. And then an estate I haven't been to for a while. I'm long overdue a visit. One of the regal old school homes of wine out in the greater Swartland area, Allesverloren. And Willem joins us as well. So really exciting lineup. On the back of what has been a really exciting week. And just before we go in to our news for this evening and then on to our special guest, I would like to say a huge thank you to everybody who supported, who bid, who got behind, who spread the word about, and who generally thrown some enthusiasm for the Dan Really Likes Wine charity auction on Monday evening. I landed from Dubai at lunchtime, dashed through. We threw everything together, but thanks to the generosity of more than 60 different wine estates, we were able to raise nearly 500,000 Rand on Monday night. And that, via the Nickel Foundation, is going to two spaces. It is going to Reach for a Dream and the work, the organization of which I am an EXCO member. I have a definite interest and a very proud one. Reach for a Dream, helping children who have life-threatening illnesses to experience some magic of moment, usually with their families. And the joy that it brings to both children and families is extraordinary. So a really good space for that money to go to. It's not where all the money's going. The other half is going to the Pinotage Youth Development Academy, which is dealing with the scourge that is unemployment by creating spaces for young people in the winelands to gain an education post-school, and to do so in a very practical manner. And the course that we're supporting is the one that puts kids into a hospitality space, learning the basics of sommelier skills and working in a restaurant and understanding the food and wine space. And out of that academy, that one-year course, 91% of the young people who complete it go on to either further employment or onto further education or into employment. So very happy to be able to support them. So thank you to Strauss, who hosted for us both online and physically. Thank you to all of the wine farms who donated. And as I said, there are over 60 of you. So thank you. And thank you to all the wine farms who presented us with wine on the night for all of our guests, including, I've got one bottle left over that Harry van Dijk didn't finish, the Sarensburg Brut, Sarensburg amongst the many who were just really good in supporting us. So almost 500,000 Rand. We'll keep you posted in particular on how that money supports the Pinotage Youth Development Academy. Right, the celebration continues. We've got three wonderful guests on the show. Before we say hello to them, though, let's have a quick look at today's wine news. And there we are. We're going to be speaking to the man on the right. I'm not sure if those are Cristiano Ronaldo statues. They don't look too far off. But there you have on the right one of our guests this evening. And of course, it is Conrad Vlok, the very deserving winemaker of the year with Diners Club. And that was on Saturday night when the event was announced. That was down at Arabella. And a very, very well-deserved accolade for Conrad out of Strandveld Wines. We'll get some more detail on that. Not with us this evening, but I'm hoping he's going to be on the show soon. Is the young man on the left. He is the young winemaker of the year, Jerome van Rooij out of Cedarburg, and also a wonderful accolade and a really important part of this Winemakers Award, not only celebrating those who are very much at the top of their game, as Conrad is, but also the next generation of superstars coming through. And you'll find Jerome sits very firmly in that space. So congratulations. And we'll be hearing very shortly from our new Diners Club Winemaker of the Year. Now this is a challenge, I think. This is Chris Bentley, the CEO at Royal Johannesburg, and he's put this up. This is Wednesday to Friday from 4 until 7, 350 Rand gets you tapas and bottomless bubbly. Now, to me, that's saying Chris doesn't think I can manage to drink 350 Rand worth of bubbles. I'm getting together a group of friends. I'm thinking Ken Forrester, Brer Rats, Groot Skalkberger. I've got a long list of people I think I'll take with me. They're coming for you, Royal Johannesburg, to see how this goes. Sundowners at the Old Oak. It's the most exciting new venue in Johannesburg. And this is Wednesdays to Fridays, tapas and bottomless bubbly from 4 until 7, 350 Rand. It's a great deal, and I suspect it might have bankrupted the Old Oak by the end of the year, so make good of it while it lasts. Speaking of bubbly, there is bubbly down in Franschhoek. This is Dariel Robertson and the Franschhoek Cup Classique and Champagne Festival, presented by Sanlam Private Wealth. It's the 3rd and the 4th of December. It's got a real kind of garden party feel to it around the monument down at the bottom end of town. Tracy Langer will be hosting you through the course of the day. There's some terrific music, including Amy Jones, whose voice is just a delight. You got some great food offerings, and then just that range of wine from the Cup Classique, from Anthony Rupert to Black Elephant Vintners. You've got Steenberg, you've got Villera, Pongrat, lots of familiar ones, but also quite a lot of international names. So Bollinger will be there, for instance, who you've got Moutet Chandon and surprisingly Tattinger. So a combination of a local Cup Classique and international champagne. And for me, that's the joy of this festival, is taking a glass of Krona and sitting it alongside a glass of Bollinger and deciding, this is why I like this one, this is why I like that one, this is how they compare. And for me, Cup Classique and Franschhoek and Champagne, it's not one or the other, but it's taking two interpretations of the same approach to making wine and seeing what makes them so unique and so appealing. And there will be plenty of appeal next weekend. That's the 3rd and 4th. I think Saturday's just about sold out, but Sunday they've still got a few tickets left. Webtickets.co.za. Dariel and her team are looking forward to seeing you. Right, well, let's head in to today's show, and it is sparked by a number of things. The news of a new winemaker of the year, as you've seen, and then a couple of arrivals in the Dan Really Likes Wine cellar of some new and eye-catching wine. So let's meet the three men behind the wine. It is a very warm welcome to Conrad, to Reino, and to Willem. Guys, lovely to have you on. Thank you very much for joining us, and congratulations, Mr. Vlok, your most eminent. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to address you now. I'm still getting used to this. This is it's a fantastic accolade, and I know that every winemaker I've ever spoken to, when you say to them, you know, you've just got 7 stars from Platter or 103 points from Greg Sherwood, you all look at me and you nod very seriously and say, yes, but Dan, it's not about that. We make the wine because we love it. But when you get this sort of accolade, Conrad, when you are the winemaker of the year, it's got to put a huge smile on your face. It's got to be something really, really special for you.
Yeah, Dan, definitely, it's beyond expectation special for me. You know, you chase the dream of making a good wine. I think it's all of us winemakers. It's what we like to do, is make really one special vintage, and then you get the opportunity once in a while that to express that special opportunity. It's like if you want a trophy, you know, some days you walk in the veld and you see it and then it disappears, and then all of a sudden one day it appears again and it's within your reach, but you still don't know if you're going to get it, because there's 6 other guys that are also hunting for the same trophy. So when it happens at the end of the day that the trophy comes your way, you know, it's a big blessing and a wonderful feeling. I think I'm still in euphoria of this feeling, and yes, it's wonderful to get all the congratulations from friends and family, and even from foe. They're all happy for me. So yes, it's a special feeling. Thank you.
I don't think there are too many foes, because not only is the wine industry a very close-knit one, but you're a popular member thereof. This has two areas of impact: the impact on you as Conrad, the impact on Strandveld as a winery. Let's start with you as Conrad. Aside from just putting a smile on your face and leaving in euphoria, as you say, what does this do to you going forward? Does it change anything? Does it give you a little bit more momentum? Does it decide to push you in a new direction at all?
Dan, definitely, at this time for Strandveld, it means a lot. We just celebrated our 20 years of when we planted our first vines, and with our group of shareholders, and I think it's great recognition for them and for what the vision that they had for starting this farm, and also then the vision by the late Gerry Wagner to plant cultivars like Sauvignon Blanc and Shiraz, etc. But especially with Sauvignon Blanc, because we all knew that that's going to work in a cool area. So that's a big endorsement for us to have claimed this trophy for this Strandveld of Aderbos Sauvignon Blanc, and it shows us the way forward that Elim, Cape Agulhas area is definitely meant for Sauvignon Blanc. It's been well endorsed previously, but now I think this is really the cherry on the cake, that this is Sauvignon Blanc country. And going forward, yes, we've already invested in planting more Sauvignon Blanc vines this year, and I think the bank and everybody will now believe me that we have to plant more again, especially because these older vineyards are going to be there forever, and we need to stay in production and also grow the brand a little bit. So that's the plans for Strandveld in the next 4 to 5 years. And as we all know, the market is tough out there. We all, like you said, it's a great community, but we're all competing against each other to sell a few bottles of wine. And this definitely helps to create a little bit more sales and awareness. But on a personal note for me, wow, I said to my wife, I should retire now. Because what's next? But no, it's just, our chairman always says to me, Conrad, your work must be fun. And definitely making wine is hard, but it's also fun. And if this comes your way, it makes it even more fun. And for me, but for now, like I said, to some of the Diners Club members on Friday night, this is really, the past month has really been interfering with my personal life of recreation, and I haven't had enough time to go spearfishing and fishing, so I definitely need to take some time off now.
It was never going to be long before spearfishing came up, and we will have that conversation before the show is out. You've also done the standard winemaker job here, Conrad, of being asked a question about yourself and immediately deflecting to your wine brand and to your wine estate, which shows a wonderful sense of priority and commitment. I do want to ask you one last question about the wine estate for now. We'll come back to the wine in particular, but I just want to ask you about Strandveld and what this means to the estate, given that you're not the most expensive wine in the market, you're not the best known wine, you're in a part of the wine world that I think is still trying to find its feet in terms of telling its story to the world. Once people know that story and they've drunk wine from the broader Agulhas area, they are blown away, and it's just getting people to drink that wine that is the journey. How much do you think this award is going to thrust Strandveld into the limelight and get people to understand just how good your wine is, and by extension, how good the wine of your region is?
Yes, Dan, thank you. Our region, it's good you touched on it. We've been pushing very hard to promote the Agulhas wine triangle, which is, from on the western side with Lomond, and on the eastern side with Malgas, the Trafford, what they call Seine, and on the northern tip, it's Bruce Jack with the Drift, and we are the southernmost winery on the south. So this is our area that the Bermuda Triangle replicates, and we call Agalas wine triangle, windswept area. So first of all, for us as an area, that is relatively unknown. It's a relatively young area. It's great exposure, and then it trickles down to Strandveld. Great exposure. Our tasting room has never been so busy in from a Monday to a Thursday, and I can definitely see people coming here. So because they've heard of the news and they want to taste the wine and see the wine. But as far as putting the prices up now on the specific vintage, I don't think that's on the card. So anybody's welcome. Buy now, shop now. We still have a few bottles of the 2021 vintage in stock that was awarded. And if you're lucky and you visit us soon, this is your trophy. Where is it now? On the screen. I just want to focus it, but you can see it's moving around.
Well, I have the same wine beside me, albeit without the stickers and the accolades. But that is one to not be shared with anybody. I'm drinking that one just myself. Lots of celebration to be done, but you're not the only one celebrating, Conrad, because Willem, you guys have got some celebrations of a slightly more established nature. It is 150 years of the Malan family at Allesverloren, and that's a pretty good moment to stop, to take stock, and to look back on a century and a half of being a real bastion of South African wine production, Willem.
Yes, thank you very much, Dan. Yeah, we're very fortunate. As you mentioned, this year Allesverloren celebrates 150 years in the Malan family. They took over the farm in 1872, and currently the owner is Dani Malan. He's the fifth generation, but after him now also his daughter and son is also on the farm. Danielle is in marketing manager, and Fani is in charge of the farm in the vineyards. So it's 6 generations on the farm already and busy with the farm, and there's some exciting times coming and exciting things happening that we are moving forward, and the farm is really doing well at this stage, and we're excited to see what's coming.
It's also a farm that's got so much history to it. We often think of Swartland generally as being this new area that's only been going for a decade or two. You guys are part of the original space, if you go right back to the very beginning, and kicking off with the port style wines that we knew you for more before you started moving into a broader variety. What's your sense of the journey that Allesverloren has taken and the important role that it's played in the South African wine story?
Yeah, I think Allesverloren, as you mentioned, is quite well known in the South African industry, and as you rightly said, is that we are well known for our port, and we are the biggest port producer in South Africa currently still. And we did have the first Tinta Barocca block planted on Allesverloren to improve the quality of the port, but through that we started making normal Portuguese red wine varieties, dry red wines, and also obviously some Shiraz and Cab and stuff like that. But so being part of the whole history and being on people's minds, walking to restaurant and see it on the menu, I think a lot of people know Allesverloren from a young age, older people, younger people. So it's nice for us to obviously be known by the older people and the older generation. But coming in the younger generation, we need to get them as well, and also get them exposed to the wine. So we try and get the wine not necessarily as it was in the old style, but we need to be true to what we were and still are. So we try and still look at the fuller style, older style wines, but it have to have some accessibility for the younger consumer as well.
Which is a constant challenge. You've got a market that's changing. You've also got a climate that's changing, an environment that's changing. And so we are seeing some change, not just into those initial stills, but we're going to be talking a little about your rosé that's coming up now as well. Is it a sense for you that as much as you've got this rich history, it is always a sense of change? There is always new stuff that you have to adapt to, that you have to invent, that you have to keep going with in order to make sure you keep up to date and are continuing to make the very best of what you have to offer.
No, sure. my philosophy is I always try to make the best possible wine I can, and through that try and push it through for specific palate that might like it. Talking about the rosé that we're going to taste a little bit later, is that we try and put a wine in the bottle that is accessible, as I mentioned, and is enjoyable with every single meal. I'm not one of those winemakers. I prefer not to make wines for a specific style. As we are in the Swartland, we're the oldest estate in the Swartland. We need to stay true to our areas, the terroir, and we need to try and still make wines that people, if they taste it, still remember the old Allesverloren, and that is what we will be using going forward as well.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that, because I've always enjoyed what you produced. And Allesverloren's Tinta Barocca was one of the early wines I drank when I came to South Africa as a university student, and it was always a favorite, and it continues to be so. And it speaks to grapes that are part of that broader port story. Is it simply the case that this is the wine that the terroir lends itself to, or is there more to this embracing of the Portuguese style of wine?
Yeah, the Portuguese grapes do very, very well in the Swartland, but it's always interesting to taste different tintas from the different areas as well, going to Carletsdorp or wherever. And it's, but I still feel our Tinta Barocca it's a very, very nicely balanced wine. You can drink it with anything. It's one of those type of wines that if you don't know what to pick, you just pick the Tinta, because it's going to go great with anything.
It does indeed. All right, well, we're going to look at that wine in detail in just a moment, Willem. Let's head over to our third guest, though. He's a busy man, and you're going to have to explain how this all works to me here, Mr. Thiart, because you're making some incredible wine at Idiom, and where Willem is inspired by Portugal, you are inspired by Italy. You've also, out in the Hemelanada fringes, got Whalehaven, again delivering some terrific wine. But it's clearly not keeping you busy enough, because you decided that the own label has come. Its time is right, and you've got a couple of brand new and very exciting wines to add to this portfolio for which you are responsible.
Evening, yes. Thank you very much for having me. Yes, Dan, I don't know. It was just a thing that I decided. I've always liked Rhone varietals, and the opportunity came around to trial and see what one can do with a bit of Grenache, which is always an interesting variety.
And we're going to be trying that as well as the white Rhone blend in a second. Tell me about the whole space, though, and keeping it together. Is it the excitement of we've got a very distinctive style of wine at Idiom versus what we're doing at Whalehaven, and it kind of keeps you balanced? Or are you working 27 hours a day just to make sure that everything gets done?
No, yeah, there's a lot of varietals that we work with on the farm. Broad spectrum, like you said, Italian. We've just planted some Albarino also. We've got some Spanish varietals. So it was just a matter of, I don't know, trying to hand it my own project, I suppose, and trying to see how far I can push the boundaries, and see where we'll end up with certain varietals.
It's often a question that people ask me when they see people who are winemakers at an established winery or an estate who then also have a label running concurrently. I think of somebody like Justin van Wyk at Constantia Glen with his Van Wyk family wines running alongside his day job. Mark Leroux does something similar at Waterford with his collection of wine. And people often ask me, but why are they doing that? Surely this wine is competing with the wine that they're being paid to make normally. My sense, and I think I'm right here, but you can correct me if I'm not, is that this is an opportunity for you to discover more, to push your own personal boundaries as a winemaker, and to become a better and more fulfilled winemaker, which ultimately should come back to the other wine that you're making and make that wine better by extension.
Yes, no, definitely. Ultimately making wine for someone else is your day job, and you can't take too many chances with that. So doing something for yourself, you can push the boundaries a little bit more. You can try and different processes, or pick grapes in different areas, or time at different ripeness. So it gives you that opportunity to do something that you, well, for lack of a better word, is too afraid to do with the owner's varietals.
It leads you into what is a challenge for a winemaker that we face as people who buy and drink wine. I walk into a reasonable restaurant, I flick through the wine list at somewhere like Marble, and I've got a couple of hundred possibilities I could be drinking. For you as a winemaker, you've now decided, right, I'm going to make these Thiart wines. What am I going to make? And because there is so much across South Africa that we do well, and there are pockets of grapes that winemakers have access to, you could have made just about anything you wanted. You've spoken about the love of Rhone. Why that love of Rhone and the decision that, yep, this is what I'm going to start with?
I don't know. I've always worked with white Rhone varietals more than any red. Obviously, I worked with Shiraz and Mourvedre. Is probably the red varietals I worked with the longest, along with Viognier. And then just the opportunity came around. There was a nice block of Grenache up in the valley, in Hemel and Aarde Valley, cool climate. I thought, why not? You know, it's a good approach. It's a good chance to take. Let's see what we can do with it. So my approach with the Grenache is much like I make Pinot Noir, you know, in the same style and the same fragrant yet structured with a little bit of tannin, but you know, enough fruit expression. So that's what I wanted to bring through in this wine. And although the label is quite funky and I say playful, the wine is still, I think, quite serious.
All right, we'll talk about the wine in a moment. We do have to look at this label, though. There are two wines, but this is the first one, and there are a couple of people out there who I know are well versed in their wine knowledge, and I'd be interested to see if Willem would have worked this out, and if Conrad, our winemaker of the year, would have worked this out as well. I see, for instance, my mum, Helen Nicol, who's on the show at the moment. Fond memories of Allesverloren, the wine my brother always sent me. That would be my late Uncle Martin. So you've got my mum drinking your wine there, Willem. And then Aaron Johnson, who I owe an apology to. I think, Aaron, you were trying to get hold of me over the weekend, according to my team. I was in the Middle East over the weekend. Greetings from Ras Al Khaimah, where I spent a few hours or thereabouts after enjoying Strandveld wines at the Greyton Wine Weekend on our recent trip to South Africa. Aran, lovely to have you supporting the show, and I will drop you a note afterwards to say hello properly. Let's see Aran and Helen and Conrad and Willem, if you can get this. The reason why this wine is called the Pope's New Crib. Now, I'll give you a moment to think about it. What could it possibly be? Why would it be called the Pope's New Crib? Willem, Conrad, thumbs up, thumbs down. Any ideas why it might have this name?
No.
Conrad's a no. All right. Well, this is really clever. And Reino, I'm interested to know who came up with this because it's really fun. It takes you back, Willem and Conrad and Helen and Aron and everybody else, to 1307, which I think was when Bayers Trutta made his first vintage. It takes you to the Pope deciding to relocate the home of the Catholic Church from Rome to a little area in Avignon, north of Marseille, heading up the road towards Lyon. And in that Avignon area became a wine growing area known as Château Neuf du Pape, the Pope's new. Now, it could be castle, but I think probably for legal reasons, it's not the Pope's new castle, but the Pope's new crib. Château Neuf du Pape, the Pope's new castle, or in this case, the Pope's new crib, which of course speaks to the fact that the style of this wine is very much Château Neuf du Pape. We'll taste the wine in a moment, but tell me about the name. Who came up with it? Whose moment of inspiration, Reino, was this particular label?
To be honest, Dan, it was absolute blind luck. I don't know, I was on the internet one day just browsing around and I came across, I don't know, I've never thought about it. I obviously knew that Grenache is one of the main varietals in Châteauneuf. So I just came across it. I've never thought about it. And it said the Pope's New Castle, the translation. I thought, you know, that's not a bad name, but, you know, to translate it straight, it doesn't make I don't know, it doesn't add to the vibe that I wanted to put on the label. So I thought back to like Pimp Your Ride and those kinds of American shows, and I thought I'll just call it the Pope's New Crib, make the label as funky as possible. I've got a web design, a graphic design friend, and he said, yeah, why not? You'll get involved, and together we came up with a label and the name and the concept, and it's been well received.
It is enormously fun. Of course, it's got to be something that is more than just attractive on the outside. Is it attractive on the inside? Well, we'll jump into that wine in a moment. Let's head back to our Diners Wine Club, Diners Winemaker of the Year. And Conrad, your label, the Poffer, I had lunch with Michael Friedjohn yesterday, and we were discussing this. Is this inspired by the fact that this particular vineyard is home to lots of small, rather lazy and fairly dangerous serpents?
Yes, definitely. The name Pofadderbos is a name that came up over, especially after 1 February while I was sampling grapes there. A puff adder actually bit my schnauzer. His name was Pepper. And Pepper got bitten by a puff adder there, and Pepper survived it. He died of old age eventually, but he blew up like one of those, like if Shrek takes one of those insects out of the air and he blows them up, and then they just like, and Pepper, the dog, blows up like that if a puff adder bites him properly. But Pepper luckily survived. And after that, everybody, myself and the people working in the vineyards and everybody, we just started referring it to as Pofadderbos. And lately, I've been, if there's a puff adder cruising around the Werfia and it's in the cottages or something, I'll gently guide it into a big cork box. It's quite safe. They love to go in there, and then I will go and release it back into the Pofadderbos. So that it can be my biological warfare against the nachtmeise, which is quite a problem here at the moment, because the nachtmeise are coming after the cover crop seeds that we plant, and they live in the root zone. And you can just see the smile on that puff adder's face when you release him in front of those burrows of the nachtmeise, and he's in there and he's going to have fun. Okay, so that's the name of Pofadderbos. And of course, Strandveld, the vineyard, the label itself was done way back by Anthony Lane. And it's one of those labels that's a timeless label. We launched it in 2008 the first time, and it's got our beautiful logo on the label that it's got the dolphin and the vineyard combined by a S for Strandveld. And our secret motto is there where earth and ocean meets, there lies the magic. And that's really where I live, this place where the earth and ocean meets, and the magic is in the soil and in the wind and in the air.
It's also in the magic of the fingers of a winemaker who just casually talks about going and sweeping out puff adders and maneuvering them around to guard his vineyards. You're made from tough stuff out in the Agulhas Triangle, and it's a combined effort of your terroir, of the place that you are, that allows you to produce this wine that has got you the accolade. I remember last year reading a beautiful piece that Melu Lambert had put together about the Agulhas wine triangle, and in particular, Sauvignon Blanc, or Sauvignon with a touch of Semillon, was just delivering something so special in the broader context of white wine in South Africa. Aside from the puff adders and the wild part of the world you live in, what is it about this area and about this vineyard for you in particular, Conrad, that's allowing you to create wine that is getting people so excited, that is allowing you to take on this mantle of winemaker of the year?
Well, it's you've touched on it. It's definitely, we have being this far south, the southernmost winery in Africa, we definitely have one of the cooler wine growing regions. We've done that. Merrill Weaver have done the thesis on it, and we are a good few degrees cooler than the average wine growing region in February, especially. And we all know that Sauvignon Blanc is a pyrazine-driven cultivar. So the cool weather that we have in January, February, and going into March definitely helps me as a winemaker to get the right grapes. Challenge is to get it right. Challenge is to when to pick it, and how to guide those beautiful grapes into a bottle and make sure that you don't lose the terroir, don't interfere too much. So I think for me as a winemaker, it's just been quite a few vintages from 2008 to now with Pof Adderbos that every year is different. A few years come out 21 and 22. If you put them next to each other now, the one is white asparagus driven and the other one is black currant driven. And why? Yes, it was a cooler vintage versus a slightly warmer vintage. But basically, those are some of the magics that we don't know. And it's not good to know. We need to have some magic still out there.
That sense of mystery that is inherent in all terrific wine. Let me lead to another mystery, and I've had one or two people send this message through, and I meant to ask you this a little earlier, Willem, but as we're on the subject of labels and titles, there's a slight wistfulness to the name of your estate when you translate it, Allesverloren, all is lost. It certainly isn't now, but I presume there must have been something a little dramatic in the mists of time at Allesverloren that gave rise to such a dramatic name.
Yes, I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand why we would call the estate is called All is Lost. But it happened in 1696 when the farm was still owned by a Kluter lady. And at that stage, they still had to go all the way back to Strandveld from the Riebeek Valley to get supplies and food, extra stuff. And it was about a 2 or 3 week trip that way and 2 or 3 weeks back. And on one of those trips in 1696, when they came back to the farm, everything was burnt to the ground and basically destroyed. And that's where the name All is Lost, or Allesverloren, comes from. And it was registered as Allesverloren in 1704.
And that puts it more than 300 years down the road of this particular story. A story that, as we mentioned earlier, is shaped very firmly around a lot of headline acts of Portuguese grapes, starting with the Tinta Barroca, which I've been drinking for many years. My family has, as my mother's comment a little earlier suggested. I remember traveling to Portugal probably 12, 13 years ago, and trying to look very self-important, Willem, to the rest of the people who are on the trip by only ordering French wine that was 10 times the price of Portuguese, and reluctantly drinking some Portuguese when I ran out of French wine and discovering it was significantly better at a much lower price. And since then, I've always been a fan of both Portuguese wine and Portuguese grapes, which probably leads to my fondness for your Tinta Barroca. For somebody who hasn't had it before, give us an introduction, what you can expect from Tinta Barroca, and what for you as a winemaker, both the challenges and rewards of producing this wine.
Yeah, what we are looking for in our Tinta Barroca is that it needs to be, we're going not necessarily for the full floral flavors, we're going a little bit riper, strong tannin structure, but luckily for us in the Swartland, tannin structure is nice and smooth. So for us, it is just there to have a little bit of a spice. So you can almost think of a Shiraz when you taste the wine. So like I said earlier, it's full, nicely structured, decent tannin structure, but it's got some nice peppery and also blackcurrant flavors on it. And it's, like I said, it just goes with anything.
And I've proved that on many, many occasions. It makes it a favorite with which I'm well acquainted. I'm not quite so well acquainted, though, with the other wine that I have here, and this is the rosé, and something we're seeing a lot of in South Africa, be it Pinotage, be it Cabernet Sauvignon and Alto. People are taking grapes that we maybe haven't always associated with rosé, and they're creating something out of them. Why the decision to decide that a Tinta Barroca led rosé was the way to go? And again, well, how easy was it to create a wine from a grape that we normally sit in a fairly big and strong red wine space?
Well, then it was a little bit of out of necessity. We wanted to make a rosé, and obviously Tinta Barocca is one of our mostly planted grapes on the farm. And initially, years before me, it was basically only Tinta Barocca Rosé. And as the volumes grew, we had to change a little bit. So that's why the name is not Tinta Barocca Rosé anymore. It's just Tinta Rosé, and Tinta just meaning dark or red. And so the cultivars in it is, as you mentioned, mainly Tinta Barocca, but there's also Touriga Nacional, which is also Portuguese, and then some Shiraz, Merlot, and Petit Verdot as well. So it's we make it from the grapes coming in of those cultivars, but it's actually coming in for the red wines, and we just bleed out a little bit of wine for the rosé, and I ferment it further as a rosé, going for floral, really nice, sweet, florally spicy flavors. Very refreshing wine. Try and we have a nice acid balance, so it's really just a very refreshing wine to enjoy.
And it also sits in a nice space for me for rosé, in that if I just want it on its own in summer, in the fridge for 45 minutes to an hour, drinking coolly, it is crisp, it has got a lightness to it, but there is still enough substance to it, which I think probably comes from that Tinta Barocca background, where if I want to have this with lunch, if I want to have it with some food, or I want my wine to have a little bit more substance, a bit more character to it, this is a wine that comfortably manages that as well.
Yes, definitely. We're fortunate that the wine's got a really nice fat fullness on the wine because of those cultivars. I think probably the Portuguese cultivars lend to that quite predominantly. So that definitely helps the wine having that full, nice fatness on the mouth and giving it some substance.
It's a never-ending selection of wine that comes the way of the Dan Really Likes Wine cellar, and it just makes it both wonderful to have this selection, but so difficult to choose what to drink, because there is so much we make so well over a different series of styles, to which is added the challenge of our wines from Thiart. And as I say that, I see Monique Erlank is watching. That beautiful blush Tinta Rosé is just perfect for the coming summer months. I think that is a very, very accurate way of putting it, Monique. Thank you for watching. Let's jump over to Reino. And before we go into the Pope and his celebratory wine, the other wine, and I need to ask you something here as well. If I go back to my French classes at school a fair amount of time ago, and which my French teacher will remember with no fondness, the E would suggest a marié as opposed to just a marie. A, is that correct? And B, what is the story behind the name of this particular wine, Reino?
Yeah, the aim was actually, Marie. It was, as I said before, I've always worked with Viognier most of my times with white varietals, and then I've always wanted to work with Roussanne and Marsanne, and so that's where the varieties in the wine comes from. Marie, yeah, it was a long thought process to come up with a name. Pope actually came quite easily, but Marie, at the end of the day, I decided or sat on a decision of my wife is Ilse Marie, or the second name of my wife, and my mother-in-law and my daughter is Marie, so it just made perfect sense to make a nice white Rhone varietal blend and call it Marie. I don't know, just clicked.
I think that's called hedging your bets and making sure that you've got a nice domestically blissful space in which to occupy. You've certainly got a blissful wine, because this is the kind of white. Look at Philip Dufton, who's my go-to for white wine advice. I think this would go down rather well with him. 50% Roussanne, 38% Marsanne, 12% Viognier. This is just it's a rich, aromatic, beautifully crafted wine. It's not a usual collection we find in South Africa, but it's a wine that's obviously been made very deliberately towards that Rhone style, which you so love. And you've created something here that I think, just speaking to some slightly unusual grapes in terms of mainstream South Africa, but together, something I suspect you're both very happy with and rather proud of.
Yes, I've always enjoyed Rhone white varietals. I like the fact that they give you a bit of width on the palate, I like the fatness that they give you, the waxiness, the glycerol content. Gives you an impression of on front palate of sweetness, although it's a dry wine. I find it fantastic with food. Obviously, so yeah, it's just a blend that always worked for me. My eventual aim with the Marie is to incorporate a few other white varietals, Rhone white varietals. I want to keep it 100% Rhone varietals. So yeah, we'll see where we end up. You know, there's space this year. I've picked Grenache for the first time, Grenache Blanc. So that will go in there. Hopefully in future, I've maybe got an option of adding some Borbelenk, which is one of the few Rhone varietals that actually has a high natural acid, which you don't get. Rhone varietals tend to have quite flat acids, high pHs. But yeah, eventually build up. Maybe again, my first vintages, I did add a bit of claret, which I got from Wellington. Maybe the area wasn't really the right area to shop for claret. But we'll see. Yeah, so there's a few varietals in scope that I want to add, and we'll see where the blend ends up. Yeah, we'll see.
For those of you worrying that Reino's gone a little off the edge and is throwing red wine into his Rhone blend, that's claret, the white grape, and not claret, the English term for red wine, if you're watching over in the UK. You do have some red wine going though, and if the first is a blend, so the second is a single variety in the Grenache Noir, our Pope's wine, paying tribute to Chateauneuf du Pape, and that kind of softer, more elegant red that I think we're seeing a lot more of, and a lot of winemakers are having a lot of fun producing at the moment, Reino.
Yes, like I said, the nice thing from Grenache Noir, the red now, is the fact that you can produce it like quite fruit forward, a lot of fruit floral characters up front, but yet still structured tannin and body in the wine, which is nice. It lends it to be able to put it in the fridge and actually chill it down a little bit. I picked the grapes on that standard. You know, I want lower alcohol, so I'm trying to keep it at between 12.5, 13, maybe just over 13. Then I'm happy. So low alcohol, nice fruit forward, but you know, to give it enough structure and palate consistency, so it doesn't seem flabby or too juicy or too fruity or too, I don't know, gummy. You know, it needs to have structure, but enough fruit to entice. You know, to be drinkable.
Yeah, it is the challenge with those sorts of wines. They can either be a bit too much like a glass of fruit juice, or they can just lack a little bit of character and a little bit of fullness. I don't think you need to worry about either of those two concerns with the Pope's new crib. You've suggested that you might tweak that blend a little with the white. Is it just going to be two wines, or do you see a Thiart empire emerging and more wines being added to the list?
No, I think I've got enough varietals in my day job. So currently, I'm just happy doing the two wines, and then I'll rather just experiment with the two wines and see how far I can push the limits on that, rather than expanding the range. I've for the first time in my life been on the other side of the counter where then I have to sell wines of my own making, and it is not easy. It's very difficult. So I'm definitely not in the frame of mind to make anything more at the moment. I'm happy with where I sit. I might grow the volume a little bit, but for this stage, I'm just content with doing some experiments and trials with various pockets of grapes and keeping to these two labels.
I remember Duncan Savage telling me very firmly he was only going to make a Savage White and a Savage Red. I'm going to record this clip and I'm going to show it to you in 5 years' time, Reino, when your 17 wines in the Thiart range are selling out across South Africa. Almost wrapped up. Just very quickly before I get a final word from our winemaker of the year. Willem, just on Allesverloren and that port style, I know you're making significant volumes of it. What's your take on our South African appreciation as consumers of port style wine, our willingness to buy it, to drink it, to serve it at meals at home? Is it a space that's growing? Has it got a bit of momentum at the moment?
Well, actually, this year we saw some growth in it. But yeah, like you mentioned, unfortunately, the South African market has been declining for a few years. And people just don't drink port anymore. I think people still have that stigma of when you need to drink it, maybe only after dinner or only a little small glass. At the end of the day, you've got a bottle of port in your cupboard that stays there for a long, long time. And what we, and specifically at Allesverloren also, we try and get people to think a little bit outside the box, enjoy port, not necessarily only after dinner, but nice with some spicy food as a main, with your main dish. And just to enjoy some ports. With that also, like we are well known for our normal fine old vintage of Allesverloren, but this year we brought out the Farnimelan Reserve port, which is was named after the owner Farnimelan's late father. So that's why it's called the Farnimelan. And we only bring out the reserve once in a while. The previous one was a 1997 vintage. So this is a 2014. So limited amount of bottles that was produced, and a little bit fuller style port, very, very nice flavors. It was longer in barrel, about 6 years in barrel, so it got some nice nutty flavors as well. So yeah, so we try some new things with the port as well. We really encourage people to try it themselves as well, and maybe even in a cocktail. It goes lovely with a gin and tonic, tastes like a martini. But yeah, to get people just to think of port again and try and drink it some more.
Yeah, so sadly, I feel it's a style that people often kind of write off or set aside as my grandmother used to drink that, or my grandfather used to drink that. It's not something I want to drink. You're doing yourself a huge disservice if that is your philosophy, because not only is it really cool to drink, but when it's made by the likes of Allesverloren, you're just dealing with people who've got well over a century of experience in getting these grapes right, and something to add to your list for this Christmas break, especially washing down turkey and ham, end of a Christmas dinner. Perfect. Speaking of food, let's wrap up with the subject that Conrad actually wants to talk about. He only agreed to be on the show if we included at least a partial conversation about spearfishing. So I've got my Pofadder Boss Sauvignon Blanc. I'm coming around for the braai that I have promised you several times I will have. Conrad, what are you setting off to catch me with that trusty spear gun of yours that's going to bring the best out of this Sauvignon Blanc?
Yes, now we're talking. We already know that there's some yellowtail here at Struisbaai, and I hope not every fisherman is now going to come here, because they're still quite scarce. But if you go out with the right crew at the right time, you might be lucky. And definitely, I think for the next few months, from now till March, April, it's probably the most sought after game fish that we're going to be hunting here is Cape Yellowtail. And I've got 20 different ways of cooking a yellowtail. But most of the recipes include a good bottle of Sauvignon Blanc with it. So don't worry, we will bring Sauvignon Blanc, but the way we're going to cook it, whether we eat it in the first few days, we'll eat it raw, and then we'll slowly start cooking it, and we might end up making a curry at the end. But we're definitely going to enjoy the fish all the way.
Looks like I might have to turn my visit to Strandveld and to Conrad into a weekend. Guys, thank you all so much for being part of an enlightening and entertaining hour with you. I love the new labels, Reino. I love the excitement of what you're making. And they're both really cool wines. And I think that white in particular is going to gain a lot of fans. Willem, I'm overdue a return to Allesverloren. That was a regular stop-off in my university days. But until then, I'll make do with the rest of my rosé and that Tinderbrog. And I think that rosé in particular this coming summer is a real treat. And your most magnificent lordship, the winemaker of the year, Meneer Vlok, congratulations. It's clearly not just hugely deserved, but one that means a great deal to you and to Strandveld. And I sincerely hope that the real takeaway from this award will be people getting to know a bit more about not just Strandveld, but about the Agulhas Triangle, because it's another one of these areas of South Africa where we're making some world-class wine and maybe not seeing quite as much of it as we should. I suspect, though, that might change with the awards. So, guys, to all of you, thank you so much. Willem, Reino, Conrad, you've got some spearfishing to get to. Enjoy the rest of the evening, guys. Thank you so much, and really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it, guys.
Cheers.
Bye.
So there we go. Our Diners Club Winemaker of the Year from Strandveld, Conrad Vlok, with his Pofadder Bos, his 2021 Sauvignon Blanc. Willem de Vries, winemaker at Allesverloren. Got that great sense of history, and there are not many people who master the Portuguese vineyards, the Portuguese vines, like they do here in South Africa. And then just some really cool new labels in between running the show at Whalehaven, at Idiom, the Pope's New Crib, and the Marie out of Thiart. A wonderful selection from three very different parts of South Africa. And that wraps us up for today. Thank you very much for joining us on the show. And on Monday, I'm chatting to a really good friend and his family. He's dragging them all onto the show. It is Kevin Arnold, who late in his winemaking career has thrown the dice and decided to create one new brand, and that is the Arnold Family Wines. We're going to be talking about those, tasting those wines, and celebrating a wonderful career in the industry with Kevin Arnold on Monday evening. I'm off to go and drink some whiskey for a change, but I'll be back to the wine pretty soon. Thanks again to everyone who supported our Dan Really Likes Wine auction on Monday. Thanks to our three wonderful guests this evening. I'll see you back on Monday night. Goodbye. To join the Pick and Pay Wine Club, simply SMS your smart shopper number to 36775. It's absolutely free, and you'll get for yourself 3 times the smart shopper points on every bottle of wine bought. You'll also get a 20% discount on 10 different wines each month, a 25% discount on a case of wine, and a Magnum, some terrific competitions and invitations to awesome events.